I just was always a wild, loose kid in my neighborhood. I just always went for mine. I maintained myself. I knew how to hustle, and I definitely wasn't no punk.
These little running around like I wasn't brought up. I was brought up toting slammers. Like, so my belt had to be extra tight. You feel me? Like
the first game, my nigga Punch Jim, what's poppin', homie? Capo, I still fuck with you already know. I shout out to Melly and everybody. I still fuck with my in Harlem. It's all good.
There's always been a razor-thin line between hip-hop fame and real street respect. And one wild night in New York, Rod Diggs made sure Jim Jones learned that lesson the hard way. This wasn't some rumor or blog gossip. It was the kind of story that lit up every block, every barbershop, every corner where people debate who's really built for this life. Jim Jones was at the top of his game. Dipset had the city on fire. Ballin' was blasting from every car, and he was moving like Harlem royalty. But the streets of Brooklyn, they don't bow to fame, no matter how shiny the chain is.
I'm from the era where we sold the drugs, we didn't use them per se. That was the quote-unquote.
That's where Rod Diggs stepped in. His name already carried weight long before the rap spotlight ever found him. Back then, Rod Diggs wasn't just an artist. He was a certified street figure. His reputation was serious, an ex-con who commanded respect in the projects, known to move with discipline and power before the industry even caught on to who he was. When people said Rod Diggs, voices dropped low. He had real connections, real soldiers, and a real code he lived by. So when Jim Jones rolled through Brooklyn with that Harlem talk and flashy energy, I started watching. And none more than Rod's crew. It all went down at a Brooklyn club, some kind of industry meets streets event. Jim Jones showed up deep, flexing heavy jewels, popping bottles, and letting everyone know Dipset was in the building. He had the superstar vibe on full blast, the shades, the designer fit, the Harlem confidence, but something in the air that night felt off. Word is Jim's crew got into a small clash with some local dudes over bottles of seats, but those locals just happened to be tight with Rod Diggs. Within minutes, the news reached him, and once Rod pulled up, the entire atmosphere flipped. Witnesses swear the energy shifted in an instant. The music dropped low, the crowd parted, and Rod Diggs walked in smooth, calm, but carrying that unspoken power, the kind that doesn't need to be announced. Rod Diggs locked eyes with Jim Jones and asked straight up, "You good, homie? You know where you at?" The whole vibe in the room shifted instantly. Jim tried to keep his cool, but Rod wasn't playing movie star games that night. He told him, "Ain't no cameras out here. Respect goes both ways." And just like that, everyone realized this wasn't some back and forth. This was a man-to-man check, and only one of them was really in control. The wild part, Jim didn't talk slick, didn't flex, didn't throw a punch. He just gave a quiet nod, trying to calm the storm before it got worse. Rod Diggs simply turned around and walked out like it was nothing. But that silence that followed, it was loud. People in the spot said it felt like watching a superstar suddenly understand. Fame don't matter when you step in another man's territory.
So you blood from this day on, when you see us throw it up, you be putting way more work in than half these bloods that be out here and things like that. So you the homie now. When you see us throw it up, that's just...
To really feel how deep that moment hit, you gotta know who Rod Diggs truly was. Born Ronald Herron, this man wasn't pretending to be tough, he was tough. Straight out of the Gowanus houses in Brooklyn, a place where you either make your lane or get swallowed whole. Rod earned his name in those streets long before the industry ever cared about his bars. By the time he picked up the mic, his reputation was already legendary. His name carried fear, respect, and loyalty. When he spoke, people listened, not just because he could rap, but because he stood for that old school street code New York once lived by before fame watered it down. So when Rod Diggs and Jim Jones crossed paths, it wasn't just two rappers, it was two worlds colliding. Harlem Flash met Brooklyn discipline. Jim brought color, confidence, and loud energy, while Rod was all grit, no smiles, and pure Brooklyn intensity. That night, all that Harlem swagger meant nothing. Word around was Rod wasn't chasing drama, he was setting a boundary. Folks said Jim's people came in acting like they ran the place, throwing cash and attitude around. Rod pulled up to remind them, "This ain't your block, this is mine."
They allege that Herron is guilty of racketeering charges for running a drug-dealing operation in the Gowanus housing development where he grew up. They also claim he was involved in 3 murders and 3 attempted murders.
The story spread across the city quick, and crazy thing is, everyone who was there told it the exact same way. Rod didn't raise his voice, didn't threaten, didn't flex. He just checked Jim Jones in front of everyone, calm and collected. And that calm, that's what made it legendary. He didn't need noise or muscle to control the room. His presence alone was power. Witnesses said Jim's whole tone flipped after that. No more bragging, no more Harlem flash. He knew exactly what time it was, even though not a single punch got thrown. That night instantly turned into street folklore. People said that was the night Brooklyn humbled Harlem, even if only for a moment. Afterwards, whispers started spreading across the city. Jim got pressed by Rod Diggs. He backed down in Brooklyn. Rod made him show respect. Whether folks exaggerated or not, the story stuck hard. And once a tale like that gets tied to your name in New York, it don't ever fade away. It becomes part of your legend, for better or worse. Fast forward a few years, Rod Diggs caught a heavy federal case and ended up doing life. But that night, people still brought it up like proof of his realness. They'd say Rod was wild, but he stood on business, even against celebs. That Brooklyn club moment turned into part of his myth, the kind that reminded everyone in the industry, fame might open doors, but it can't protect you from the streets.
Rod Diggs got 3 life sentences. You heard about this?
I actually seen it on, I think it was on your website yesterday, and I was like, and I feel bad.
Some lines you just don't cross. As for Jim Jones, that night hit like a cold reality check. He's always been a hustler, always confident, always loud with it, but even he couldn't dodge the shadow that story cast over his name in the streets. Harlem still held him down, no question, but outside his turf, folks started whispering every time he talked tough in an interview or dropped bars about being outside. Fans flooded comments saying, but what about Rod Diggs? It became that one story people refused to let go of. And what's crazy is he never addressed it, not once. He never confirmed it, never denied it, just kept quiet. And that silence, that said everything. Because if it wasn't true, most people expected Jim to shut it down fast. But instead, he let it breathe. Maybe realizing some stories are better left untouched. Behind the scenes though, people close to Jim say that moment changed him. They say after that night, he moved different, more careful, more aware. Like he knew one thing for sure. In New York, respect is something you can't just rap about. You gotta earn it every single time. After that night, Jim Jones started moving different. He stopped rolling with a heavy crew at Brooklyn events and kept his circle tight. His focus shifted, less about showing off, more about building business. It was like Rod's calm check hit him deep, a silent wake-up call that fame don't erase consequences. Meanwhile, Rod Diggs turned into a symbol of that real New York essence. He stood for the streets that never begged for attention, the kind that moved with quiet confidence and real respect. Even after his conviction, Rod's name stayed alive in the city. Rappers kept shouting him out in songs and street legends passed down stories about him. How cool and respectful he was when you came correct, and how dangerous it got if you didn't. That balance between fear and respect, that's what made Rod stand out from everyone else. When documentaries and interviews about the old New York started dropping, this story always resurfaced, the night Rod Diggs humbled Jim Jones. But here's what made it special. It wasn't about beef or clout chasing, it was about something real. It showed how ego gets checked when it steps outside its comfort zone. For real fans, it wasn't just gossip, it was a message. The streets ain't something you rent for a music video, it's something you belong to. Even today, years later, that one story still drifts through conversations, still whispered in barbershops and studio sessions across the city. Every time Jim's name comes up and talks about street credibility, the same debate starts. Some say it's exaggerated, others swear they were there and saw it happen. But no matter how the story is told, the message always stays the same. No matter how big you get, there's always somebody realer, quieter, and ready to remind you where you stand if you start to forget. That night became more than gossip. It became part of hip-hop history, part of the New York legend that never fades. The night Rod Diggs humbled Jim Jones wasn't just some beef. It was a defining moment. It showed everyone the real difference between fame and foundation. Harlem had the lights, no doubt, but Brooklyn had the code. And when those two worlds collided, the city remembered who walked out with his respect untouched. Because in this game, whether you're a rapper, a boxer, or a boss, the rule never changes. You can't fake real. Rod didn't have to talk tough or make a scene to prove it. That night, he reminded everyone what true presence looks like. No threats, no chaos, but just a man standing firm on principle. And that story, it never died out. Because it wasn't just about Jim Jones or Rod Diggs. It was about what happens when image meets reality. See, fame can make a man forget where he's standing, but the streets, they'll always remind you exactly who you are. Rod Diggs didn't need a flashy chain, a viral clip, or a trending moment. His energy alone spoke louder than any hit record ever could. He just looked a man in the eyes and sent the message that'll never fade. Respect don't care about fame. And that's something the new generation needs to hear. It ain't about who's loudest online. It's about who still stands tall when the lights go off. For Jim Jones, that night became a humbling moment. You can be rich, famous, even a legend in your own lane. But when you step into another man's world, the only currency that matters is respect. He learned that lesson the hard way. And whether he ever speaks on it or keeps it silent, that moment became part of his story forever. Sometimes, silence is the only way to accept the truth without saying a word. As for Rod Diggs, yeah, he's locked up now, but his legend is still alive and moving through the boroughs. People still talk about how he carried himself, how he never bowed to anyone, and how his name still crosses city lines with we. He was the embodiment of that old New York energy, back when your word meant something, and your reputation came from actions, not followers. You might not agree with everything he did, but one thing's for sure, Rod Diggs stood on business. This story ain't about glorifying the streets. It's about remembering what the game was built on. Loyalty, integrity, and discipline. The kind of values that separate the real from the fake. Every rapper wants that level of respect, but few are willing to pay the price it takes to earn it. And that's what makes this story timeless. It's more than gossip, more than a headline. It's a cautionary tale, a reminder of what realness truly means. So if you're still watching this story unfold, hit that like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment below. Tell us what you think about that night in Brooklyn. Did Jim Jones get humbled, or was it just street legend? Let's talk about it.